I'm Vanessa Cowie, and I'm assisting Janice Cannon as your worship associate this morning to welcome to the Unitarian Universalist of Transylvania County. Yay, UUTC, where we begin by remaining seated and silently greeting the inherent worth and dignity in each other. What a beautiful morning, outdoors and indoors. Our lovely hydrangeas and flower arrangements are in honor of Marcia Clark, whose celebration of life was here yesterday. And we also honor Tricia Parker, whose memorial service was here on Friday. This has been an anxious week, with threats of fearful destruction coming from our national leader. Tomorrow evening, Monday, April 13th, NAACP Transylvania, Faith in Action, offers a program, I believe we have a slide, Liberating Faith Responds to Fear. The program will be at the Mary C. Jenkins Center. Doors open at 6, and the program starts at 6:30. I have more announcements, but I'm going to keep them minimal. You can read the slides. There are handouts, flyers posted on the bulletin board in the fellowship hall, and you have a newsletter to read because we want to hear from our guest today. The auction kickoff party, though, this is too good to hold on to. The auction kickoff is this coming Friday, April 17th at 5 o'clock here at UUTC. Everyone is invited. You'll be able to view auction items in the lobby and online, and already some in the lobby. Instructions for how to sign up and sign in for the auction are available in the lobby as well. The auction team thanks everyone for their participation. And today at 3:30 at the Parker Concert Hall at the Brevard Music Center, Dr. Laura Becker presents Magical Melodies, which is the next installment of the Explorations in Jewish Life and History series. Many, many more announcements, but you know how to find them. Here at the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County, we welcome all who come with goodwill in their hearts, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, age, whom you love, and what spiritual paths you travel or have traveled. Today, we welcome, honor, and celebrate women in particular, the power of women. And we hold on to hope that a time is coming when every person, everywhere, is welcomed, honored, and celebrated, and empowered. Speaking of honor, I am deeply honored to introduce our speaker today. A native of Western North Carolina, the Reverend Carter Heyward is a feminist liberation theologian, priest, and author whom we are fortunate to count as part of our UUTC community. In 1974, she was one of the Philadelphia 11 women who became ordained in the Episcopal Church 2 years before it explicitly affirmed and authorized the ordination of women to the priesthood. Through this courageous act, Wikipedia, and thus the world, knows Reverend Carter to this day. Look it up. However, her becoming continues. Here in our community, she founded the free rein therapeutic horseback riding, free Rein Center, and she is also the vice president of our local NAACP and serves on the Faith in Action Committee, along with Reverend Bob and our board president, Susan Mosley. Is Reverend Bob present today? I think not. Okay. I'll just acknowledge our settled minister is Reverend Bob Ringillian. Reverend Carter's sermon takes its title from a letter written in 1973 to encourage a person who was in despair over the mess the world was in. So as we move into worship with our prelude, get ready to hold on to your hat. Our prelude is Stand Up, music and lyrics by Joshua Campbell and Synthus Ecumens Erivo, arrangement by Tia Douglas, and it'll be performed by Janice, myself, Sharon, Krista, Joellen, and Elaine with percussion by John and James.
With my face turned to the sun, weight on my shoulder,
oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. Do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's why I'm gonna stand up. Take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. Ooh-way-oh. 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 Early in the morning, before the sun begins to rise, we're gonna get moving toward the separating line. I'm wading through muddy waters. You know I gotta make up mine. And I don't mind if I lose any blood on the way to salvation. And I'll fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones.
and I know what's around the bend might be hard to face 'cause I'm alone, and I just might fail, but Lord knows I try.
Sure as stars fill up the sky. Stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling? feel it in my bones. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you.
Embracing strength, poet unknown. She embraces strength in every stride, with fierce determination by her side. A strong woman, unapologetically herself. A symbol of perseverance, a beacon of wealth. Unafraid to stand up, unafraid to speak. In her presence, the world feels less bleak. A role model for all young and old, a strong woman's story beautifully told. We light our chalice today to acknowledge and celebrate all the strong women in our congregation and in the world. This is our time to light candles of joys and sorrows in support of our congregation. We have one candle today of joy from Susan Mosley, a candle for Nancy Richards. Today is her 70th birthday. Yay, Nancy! And we will light one more candle for those whose joys or sorrows have not been expressed today. Spirit of the universe that runs through us all, we lift up those who have asked for acknowledgement of their cares today and combine our energies to support Nancy in her celebration of joy. In the name of all that is holy, amen. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots fold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. The opening words this morning, it's a poem entitled Women by Nigerian poet Okenyehike Prosper. Women, oh, women, see their wrath. Fired by pain, yet called unkind, they rise with fire in their veins, silent storms behind their eyes. The world whispers of their supposed sins, blind to the battles they survived. Karaba knew this bitter truth, a victim first, a villain next. Every strike against their stole built a story of fire they could not quell. Hands that defend are called cruel. Voices that fight are drowned in shame. Society judges the wounded heart, branding courage with its blame. Still, they walk through shadowed streets bearing scars that gleam like stars. For every hand that tried to break them, they rise fierce, unbound, and ours. They will not vanish, they will not bend, made of impurities, yet forged as steel, shaped into the sharpest swords. Their truth, their fire, their unbroken will. Our opening hymn this morning is number 159, This Is My Song.
How lovely. Thank you for the gift of being able to sing in this community. Today, we'll hear about Harriet Tubman, a woman who led many of her people out of slavery to their freedom. She lived more than 100 years ago, and we still draw courage and hope from her example. Our wisdom story, thank you, Kevin, for loaning us the pulpit and the wisdom story for today for the women's service. Our story is about another Black woman from our own time who also made a difference. Georgie Badillo was born in Burkina Faso, an African country, where as a child she sometimes walked for hours to get water for her family. When she grew up, she became a supermodel, which gave her some additional power. One day, Georgie learned that her own sister, who happened to be pregnant, still had to get up in the middle of the night to walk for water. Georgie had a fierce determination to bring clean water to her people, and she started the Georgie Badillo Foundation to do that. The Water Princess is inspired by her story. It's by Susan Verde, illustrated by Peter H. Reynolds, and published by Penguin Random House. I'm gonna read the actual book because I can't trust my eyes to read that far. I am Princess Gigi. My kingdom, the African sky, so wide and so close I can almost touch the sharp edges of the stars. I can tame the wild dogs with my song. I can make the tall grass sway when I dance. I can make the wind play hide and seek. But I cannot make the water come closer. I cannot make the water run clearer, no matter what I command. It is early morning, still dark. My mother wakes me. Gigi, my princess, it is time to get up. We must collect the water. Water, come. Do not make me wake before even the sun is out of bed, I demand. Come, please, I say. But the water won't listen, and I know we will have to walk so far to the well. I am too sleepy to put on my crown. I think of the pot that will rest on my braids instead. The thirst comes quick. Dry lips, dry throat. I squeeze my eyes shut. I see it clear. I dip my toes in it, cool. I scoop it up and bring it to my lips. Slowly I open my eyes. Nothing. I kick the dust. I grab my empty pot and place it upon my head. My mother does the same. And our journey begins, full of song. My mama adds her melody. Our steps are light. We twirl and laugh together. The miles give us room to dance. Halfway there, we stop for a moment at the giant karité tree, long enough to grab a handful of sweet shea nuts for energy. We can keep the dance going just a little longer. Whoops. Mama, are we there yet? Finally, I hear the water running from the well, the giggles of my friends, the chatter of women. Some have traveled farther than I, only to return home when the sun has gone to bed. Mama holds our place while I play with friends. The dance continues. The water is flowing. Pots filling with the dusty, earth-colored liquid. Gigi, come, maintenant. My turn now. The dance home has slowed to careful steps. My thirst so heavy like the full pot I carry. Our song is softer now. Our shoulders ache, our feet cramp. I see home at last. Mama boils enough water for drinking. We wait. We wash our clothes. We prepare food for cooking. My father comes quickly from the fields to share in the drink and the meal. He scoops me up. My princess, you have returned with the water. Drink, Maman says, finally. Every sip fills me with energy. I want to make it last, but I can't. I gulp it down. Clothes and body clean. I sing to the dogs. I dance in the tall grass. I hide from the wind. Maman brings one last cup she has saved just for me. Drink, my princess. Sleep, my princess. Tomorrow, we journey again. Maman, I say as I close my eyes, why is the water so far? Why is the water not clear? Where is our water? Sleep, she says. Dream, she says. Someday you will find a way, my princess. Someday. I am Princess Gigi. My kingdom, the African sky, the dusty earth, and someday the flowing, cool, crystal clear water. Someday. And we have someone, Kevin, to take the children's chalice. Or will you?
Any kids who'd like to join us in the children's classroom? We're going now.
Today, we hear about what's possible even when times are bleak. When times are bleak. When what indeed is not possible. When we come together, bringing our gifts of welcome, of compassion, of love, of strength, of power, of ferocity. And yes, of money. As our ushers pass the basket, remember that if you place treasure into the envelope, it will go to our charitable partner for the month, the Children's Center. Cash or checks in the basket itself will support UUTC and its mission. Your gifts freely given are accepted with gratitude and joy. And now, in preparation for our sermon, we'll have the anthem, Harriet Tubman.
come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up. One night I dreamed I was in slavery, counting 50 was the time. So I rose the only sign, come on around to ease on up, and say it out of the night. Appeared a lady in a distant pilgrim band. First made she unhooding her hand. We grew a for this young man, and saying, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. She said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove for the Underground Railroad. Come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up. Hundreds of miles we traveled onward, gathering ladies from town to town, seeking every lost and found, saying, come on, freedom once were and saying, somehow my heart was growing weaker, though by the wayside sinking sand. Firmly did this lady stand, lifting me up and took my hand, and saying, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. She said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove for the Underground Railroad. Who are these children dressed in red? They must be the ones that Moses led. Who are these children dressed in red? They must be the ones that Moses led. And saying, come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up. And saying, come on up, I've got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. She said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove for the Underground Railroad. Underground Railroad. Come on up.
Wow. Thank you so much, dear sisters. Women and men, John, Catherine, everyone who's helped make this service possible. Nancy, for your birthday, congratulations. I am so happy to be here, as I always am happy to be here when I can be, and I appreciate your inviting me to preach. I want to ask you, before I begin, to take a minute, go inside yourselves, and think of what you are most frightened of. What most frightens you? And try to hear what I have to share this morning through that awareness, because it's really important that we all be in touch with that place inside ourselves, since it's in all of us. I've reworked this sermon a couple of times during the last few weeks because everything keeps changing. I want to be clear that even though this sermon is not about the ill-advised war that our president has waged and continues to wage against Iran, I join my voice here and I imagine all of you do as well, with Pope Leo's and other wise spiritual leaders throughout this world in denouncing the unnecessary, violent, evil assault on both God and humanity. It's completely evil, unnecessary. It needs to stop. That could and should and will, I hope, be a sermon one of these days very soon. And it can be this sermon if you hear it this way. There are ways and ways that people hear sermons differently. But I want to be one thing clear about this particular sermon. I don't want to leave room for each of you to decide what I mean when I insist that Harriet Tubman's moral decision to lead people out of slavery was not a one-off, something that the rest of us don't have to do because she did it. This is unfortunately not only how we tend to view our heroes. They do it for us. We are spared. It's also how most Christians interpret the life and ongoing work of Jesus. He did it for us, therefore we're off the hook. I'm speaking as a Christian leader here. That's a mistaken view of Jesus. It's a mistaken view of Harriet Tubman. It's a mistaken view of each of us. This sermon is intended to put us all on the hook, on the spot, shepherds of justice and peace, prophets of the moral imperative to love fiercely, that is, to advocate for the well-being of all people, including those whom we do not know, those whom we have been taught to fear. It's up to us to keep Jesus, to keep Harriet Tubman, to keep other prophets and saints alive and active in our world. It is up to us. They didn't do it for us. They are doing it with us, many of us believe, in spirit. Perhaps all of us can believe they are with us in memory, helping us as we go. I want to suggest 4 important lessons from Harriet Tubman for perilous times. And I'm going to elaborate on these a little bit later in this sermon. Number 1, to recognize our own seeds of goodness waiting to sprout, which require claiming our personal power to make a difference. Our personal power to make a difference. Second, to realize that fear is always the greatest enemy. Fear. Not even hatred. Underneath hatred is fear as our greatest enemy. Number 3, to prioritize faith in the liberating freedom of spirit that moves us not necessarily out of any organized religion, but beyond any undue attachment to any religious dogma or tradition or rules that are too often constructed to hold us back, to keep us down, to mute our voices, and finally to act boldly, to do what we must, to stay focused, to stay determined, to be as clear-headed and resilient as possible. But first, I must tell you about Harriet Tubman, because she has been a teacher for me in this regard. Harriet Tubman was born enslaved in 1822 in rural Maryland. It's important to realize that while we remember Harriet Tubman as an enormous figure, often referred to as the Moses of her people, a giant of a woman who led people to freedom on what would become known as the Underground Railroad, her story did not begin that way. Like most kids, she had hopes and dreams. This young Black woman named Araminta Ross, nicknamed Minty. She harbored a yearning for freedom, and especially having watched in horror as her sisters were sold and taken away when she was in her teen years, a determination grew in her to free herself from the monster of slavery. So in her late 20s, Minty decided to risk fleeing in the night. It's not clear whether her husband, John Tubman, agreed to go with her, but only Minty herself was able to escape. Some accounts say that she and John attempted to flee together, but that John was captured, beaten, lost an eye, while Minty, yelling freedom or death, wound up leaping into a raging river, this part we know is true, to evade her master and the other men who were in pursuit. Because she did not immediately surface or get washed ashore, her pursuers assumed she was dead. But she had washed up further downstream, almost dead, but managed to keep on going. Before her escape, and this is very interesting to me, Minty had sought counsel from her pastor, who was himself a black man, a preacher, who, when preaching in front of white people, which was all the time basically, publicly counseled slaves to obey their masters. Keep that in mind. That's a tactic. But Minty's father knew better. Minty's father knew this guy, and he knew that this preacher was involved secretly with helping slaves escape. So the preacher gave Minty the name of a man, the man's name was David, to seek out once she made it the 90-plus miles on foot to Philadelphia. This was in about 1848, when Minty was 26 years old. Once in Philadelphia, having tasted her own personal power and fortitude, Minty decided to change her name, to give herself a freedom name, and so she chose the name Harriet in honor of her mother, whose name was Harriet, and she kept her husband John Tubman's last name. Her free name, she called it. Harriet Tubman was determined to go back and get her own family, basically bring them to freedom. So she told David she wanted to go back and do this, and despite his protest that the Underground Railroad had to stay more impersonal and could not focus on specific families or individuals, Harriet nonetheless was determined to go back and get John and her parents and her sister and her nieces. So off she went, traveling on foot the almost 100 miles to get home. When she arrived, and keep in mind, she's traveling at night so as not to be seen. She's on foot. She's really quite a small woman in stature, not a giant of a person at all. When she got back, she discovered that John, who believed her to be dead, had remarried, and that his new wife was pregnant. She was brokenhearted. She decided to return to Philadelphia on her own unless she could talk her parents and sister into joining her, which she could not. But several other people did want to join Harriet in her secret journeying back to Philadelphia, so she set out again, this time with a handful of enslaved men, women, and even an infant with her. Drawing on what I think can only be called faith in something stronger and more powerful than her own one small self, Harriet knew that if this small band was to make it to freedom, she needed to exert authority, unquestioning authority. You do what I say you do, period. And so, with Harriet Tubman in the lead, sometimes falling to her knees seeking direction, and we hear this from other people along the way, falling to her knees, apparently in a trance of some kind, the small group made it to Philadelphia, much to the amazement of David and other organizers of the Underground Railroad. Between 1850 and 1860, over a 10-year period, Harriet returned again and again to Maryland and to other parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the Upper South to gather up slaves from town to town, which is what we were just hearing in this wonderful song. She wound up becoming the most prominent conductor on the Underground Railroad, leading a total of 70 enslaved people to freedom against all odds. She was a cunning leader. She obviously worked in the dark. She was called Moses by many people, both slaves and masters, who did not know her personally, but only through her fiercely liberating reputation. Because of her larger-than-life aura, most white people assumed that Moses was a white abolitionist man, whom they feared and hated. She became legendary among black people, slaves and free. With the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act very early on in her work, it was in 1850, Harriet and David and other free blacks in Philadelphia knew that any black person could get picked up off the street and deported back to the South. Now, does this remind us of anything? Anybody could get picked up and deported back. No black person in the United States, even in the North, was safe. So Harriet helped black people who had come with her to Philadelphia and whom she met along the way continue fleeing to Ontario, Canada, where they could live freely as refugees. In Canada, Harriet met John Brown, whom she helped plan the 1859 attack at Harper's Ferry. After his death, and I don't know what you all learned about John Brown, but I heard he wasn't a very nice man. When I was growing up and studying history, John Brown was not a hero to white children in school. To Harriet Tubman, he was a hero, and he was a friend. After his death, Harriet said of Brown, "He'd done more in dying than 100 men would in living." He'd done more in dying than 100 men would in living. During the Civil War, Harriet herself worked as a scout. I bet she was pretty good, a spy, a nurse, and helped organize a Combahee River raid in South Carolina that freed more than 700 slaves. Following the war, Harriet joined Sojourner Truth and Susan B. Anthony in working for women's suffrage. Eventually, Harriet Tubman settled in Auburn, New York, where she founded a facility for former slaves with mental challenges and where she spent time nursing them. Eventually, she herself became a resident of the same facility, and she died there in 1913 at the age of 91. She and Frederick Douglass had become devoted friends during the days of the Underground Railroad. At some point, Douglass wrote to Harriet Tubman, and this is a quote, "Most that I have done and suffered in the service of our cause has been in public, and I have received much encouragement at every step of the way. You, on the other hand, have labored in a private way. I have worked in the day, you have worked in the night. The midnight sky and the silent stars have been the witnesses of your devotion to freedom and of your heroism." And again, this is from Frederick Douglass. "Except for John Brown, he of sacred memory. Except for John Brown, he of sacred memory, I know of no one who has willingly encountered more perils and hardships to serve our enslaved people than you have." It's a real tribute, Harriet Tubman. Returning to the 4 lessons that leapt out at me as I considered Harriet Tubman's relevance today, the first is that Harriet really did believe in the power of human goodness. Her own life contained seeds of goodness that sprouted, and I'll get to where that image comes from in a minute. Seeds of goodness that sprouted when the times called for it. I urge you, every one of you here, to imagine your life as filled with seeds of goodness, each day waiting to sprout. In 1973, E.B. White of Charlotte's Web loved corresponding with fans, and he responded to a man who was depressed and distressed about the state of the world in 1973. "Dear Mr. Naidu," he said, this is E.B. White, "as long as there is one upright man, as long as there is one compassionate woman, the contagion may spread and the scene is not desolate. Hope is the thing that is left to us. In a bad time, I get up on Sunday morning and wind the clock as a contribution to order and steadfastness. Sailors have an expression about the weather. They say the weather is a great bluffer. I say the same is true of our human society. Things can look dark, then a break shows in the clouds, and suddenly all is changed, sometimes truly suddenly. It is quite obvious," he wrote, "that the human race has made a mess of life on this planet. But as people, we all harbor seeds of goodness that have lain for a long time and are waiting to sprout when the time is right. Man's curiosity his relentlessness, his inventiveness, his ingenuity have led him into deep trouble, we can hope that these same traits will enable him to claw his way out. So hang on to your hat, hang on to your hope, and wind the clock, for tomorrow is another day. Z.B. White. If Christianity has done us as a nation, as a society, and as a culture one great disservice, it has been to play up our capacity to sin, all the while playing down our capacity for goodness. It's a real problem. Not surprisingly, E.D. White didn't find Christian dogma helpful. Instead, he put his faith, and these are his words, in the spirit of freedom and creativity and how spiders spin their webs. White was not anti-Christian, but rather he managed to transcend Western Christianity's devotion to sin. The church has played a huge role in making us fear ourselves, our bodies, our appetites, our dreams, our possibilities, one another, especially people we don't know. If we care about a sacred spirit by whatever names, and if we practice any religion, we must insist that our religion teach us that our basic, inherent capacity for goodness is rooted in our connectedness, our relatedness, our mutuality with others. Our connectedness to all creation and to all creatures makes us who we are. It shapes us, and it shapes our goodness. And the word we usually call this is love. It shapes our capacity to love. This radical relatedness, which is a synonym for love. This mutuality is the only way those of us who believe in God and talk about God can ever know God. Otherwise, we don't know what we're talking about. Love, mutuality, radical relatedness, creativity, seeds of human goodness in all of us waiting any day to sprout again and again. Harriet Tubman spent most of her life doing what I would say godding. I use the word God as a verb usually. Godding, loving, seeking the freedom and liberation that comes with the love of neighbor and self. It's always the way it is. But why has Christianity played down our goodness? Harriet Tubman named it. Fear, she said, is the enemy. Back to the question I asked you at the beginning. What are you most afraid of? What is your fear? Fear is always the enemy of goodness, the enemy of all humans who harbor seeds of goodness. Fear is the enemy we must all overcome individually and collectively if we ever hope to make, even in the smallest ways, justice roll down like water and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Jackie Robinson's widow says he always regretted letting his fear of the white baseball establishment pressure him into testifying against Paul Robeson in the McCarthy hearings in 1949. You probably recall that the House on Un-American Activities, a precursor to our own Department of National Security, targeted the great American athlete and singer Paul Robeson as a communist. Now, Robeson was a communist, as were many Americans who yearned for racial and economic justice in the mid-20th century. A number of my friends were red diaper babies. Perhaps some of you were too. Babies born to communist parents in the 1940s. These folks might have been right, they might have been wrong, but mostly they were idealistic Americans who deeply wanted their country to feed and clothe and house hungry people, people who wanted justice. That's who they were for the most part. We can assume that the rich young man in Matthew 19 who turned away from Jesus rather than consider giving his wealth to the poor was afraid of something. What was he afraid of? Poverty? Loss of status? The unknown? Perhaps in the 20th century, and I say perhaps sort of ironically because I think most certainly Jesus would have been called a communist in this country. Certainly he would have been. He most certainly was a socialist, a believer in everyone being fed, clothed, housed, taken seriously. It is no wonder the powers of his day and of ours were and are so afraid of the real person, Jesus of Nazareth. So how do we deal with our fear? Because we are all afraid. Just several suggestions here. Number one, we can pretend not to be. I'm a member of AA, and one of the things they say in AA is if you don't believe in a higher power, or if you don't believe in this or that really might help you, pretend to believe. If you're afraid, pretend not to be. Just pretend not to be, and perhaps in time you won't be. You'll be so good at pretending that you're not, that you'll have learned yourself into a new way of being. Number two, we can play into the stereotypes of whatever our enemies call us. To deter those who may wish us harm, we can pretend to be nuts. I have a friend who knew an old woman named Bertie Hale. She was a black woman, and she lived in downtown Washington, and she was afraid to go out at night onto the streets, and so she pretended to be crazy. So she'd go out into the streets and be, leaping around and making faces, and nobody would get close to her because she was acting like a mad woman. A tactic. I had a queer friend, a beautiful guy named Louis. This would have been back in the 1980s in Atlanta. He was scared, of course, as a gay man. He really was a wonderful queen. I mean, he was robed in pink satin, and he loved to play the part that he was told that he was. And so he would get onto the bus in downtown Atlanta, and he'd put some kind of gay rag beside him and some kind of pink satin something beside him, and nobody would get near him. And that was the way he stayed safe. Thirdly, we can be honest with ourselves and each other, at least some of our friends, about our fear. We can name it. And in naming it, we are empowering ourselves, and we can begin to move through it. As Audre Lorde says, Audre Lorde, the great black womanist poet and activist, when we speak, she said, we are afraid our words will not be heard or welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. That being the case, speak. We must speak because we're afraid in any case. Finally, a Quaker woman at a rally in Boston in 1983, I'll never forget her. She said, when you're feeling afraid, do something and do it together. This is because we literally encourage one another. And in doing that, we empower each other, and we can begin to transcend our fear. Whatever these fears we are harboring, we can help each other through them. Like Harriet Tubman, who became a feminist activist after the Civil War, every honest American woman knows something about the harsh, negative characteristics attached to women's resistance to patriarchal norms. This has always been doubly and triply and quadruply so for Black, brown, and other women who are perceived as non-white. And so it is that, like Harriet Tubman, everyone, and women in particular, must empower each other to move through and beyond these fears that we are in touch with. We must empower each other. It's together that we will get through them. If we intend to claim our seeds of goodness, if we intend to let them sprout and scatter them on behalf of justice and the common good, we must overcome our fear, and we can by tapping into our goodness together. Number three, this depth of resolve, this ability to encourage and empower each other, does involve a leap of faith, a movement from prioritizing religion as an established set of doctrines and rules to casting ourselves into a freedom-moving spirit open to wherever she, he, it, or they may be leading us. Making such a leap of faith can be life-changing for women and girls in a patriarchal situation like ours, and in the lives of Black and brown people in a white supremacist society like ours. Leaping in faith beyond any religious restraint may or may not involve leaving the church, as it has for many people. Regardless, moving beyond fear to live and speak our truths boldly requires a willingness to leap beyond the rules and rituals of organized religion, any religion. if need be, to head for freedom, fear be damned, and finally, to act boldly, to do what we must, to be clear-eyed about what we intend to do, then push on through our fear, to be determined, to stay resilient. If we water our roots, they become the source of our faith in something that is moving in us, around us, beyond us. Now, this does not have to be what Christians have always called God, this something. In this sense, I really am a daughter of AA, this higher power, this power of mutuality, this whatever it is that empowers us, that is bigger than simply Carter Heyward. It's bigger than any one of us. It's bigger than simply this one church. It's something big and moving, whatever it is. To have faith in this something that is moving in and around and beyond us, before us and over us, a power that holds us up and carries us on. The most remarkable thing about Harriet Tubman was her resolve and her clear-headedness. Imagine what she was going through, if you possibly can. Sneaking around in the night, falling to her knees in a trance, waiting for something or someone or whatever to give her a sense of direction, and then getting up and demanding that the people with her follow her into this dark path. What was that? What was keeping her and them alive and going? Something bigger than simply the one little woman. She stumbled into this role of being Moses. She didn't set out to free others. She wanted to be free herself. That was what drove Harriet Tubman. But once she realized how deeply others too were yearning for this wonderful liberation she had tasted, she realized that she had a role in this life as a leader of these people. And so, taking this leap of faith into whatever, she made this her life's work. Those who accompanied her attested to her, whether it was prayerfulness or madness, they didn't know, but these trances that she would have, and her getting up from her trance and then heading off and demanding that they come toward freedom. And yet she had to let others decide whether or not to come. And that's so hard for those of us who see ourselves as helping others and who are ministers of any kind or helpers, either professionally or personally or both, to let people not come with us, not do what we think they should do, stay in what we see to be bondage, and what may truly be bondage, leave them alone. One of the things, and I've said this here in this pulpit before, one of the great things that Jesus of Nazareth said to his disciples was, do your best, and if people don't want to hear what you say, leave them there. Wipe the dust from your feet, or shake the dust from your feet and go on your way. Don't look back, don't worry about them. A lot of us need to take heed in that, take heart in that. Just know that we've got something to do, and those who are coming with us can come with us, and that is wonderful. And don't worry about those who are saying, oh, no, I can't come. Maybe not. Someday they will change their minds. In closing, I want to say something about the controversial proposal to put Harriet Tubman's face on the $20 bill. As you can imagine, this has been shelved for a while. However, I must tell you, the fear was not born with Donald John Trump, but rather grew up with him and with all of us who were born in the aftermath of World War II and during the Cold War. As Americans, we learned the wrong lesson after World War II. We learned fear as our spiritual grounding. This is especially true for Christians, but I believe it was true for all Americans in the aftermath of World War II. We learned fear of communism as a national creed, and that has gotten translated into socialism in our time. We learn fear rather than faith in acting together for our seeds of goodness to be sprouted. We let fear become our master. Our national leaders and church leaders, usually white Christian men, often good individuals like Dwight Eisenhower and Billy Graham, wrapped Christianity up in American flags, which they tied together with the increasingly idolatrous work of capitalism as the way of God. We baby boomers and everyone who came after us were learning to bow to this unholy trinity of patriotism, Christianity, and capitalism woven together is almost interchangeable. Patriotism, Christianity, and capitalism. we were taught the fear of communism as a basic requirement for loving God. Do you all remember that? Those of you who are my age, who grew up in this society, learned that communism was about as bad as it gets. And if you were Christian, you were taught that it was anti-Christian. It was anti-God. The fear was wielded as a weapon to destroy thousands of good people like Paul Robeson and to attack every movement for social justice that has raised its head in our country during the past 80 years. Every movement for social justice has been attacked as a communist-inspired movement, every single one. The fear also put our country on the wrong side of every war in the last half of the 20th century. After World War II and the Korean War, every war beyond that. If we were in it at all, we were on the wrong side, the side that was fighting to keep people down. And I can name Iran, nation of Iran in 1953. We undercut their revolution. Guatemala in 54, Cuba in 59, the Congo in 60, Chile in 73, Nicaragua in 80, and those are just some of them. We were on the wrong side. We were working to undercut liberation movements, all because of our fear of communism. Fear of communism. Effectively, we steered these smaller nations into partnerships with the Soviet Union. Look what happened to Cuba. This brings us to the day under the crazed gaze of our president, who does his daily worst to make us afraid of every nation in the world, and he quickly calls them communist, which doesn't even mean anything anymore given who his friends are, that is not already in his pocket and afraid of those Americans with whom we disagree politically. So while the controversy about putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill reflects an ongoing crisis shaped by our national fear of communism or socialism, it also mirrors our current government's special abhorrence of Black, brown, Asian, female, and queer heroes. Honoring Harriet Tubman in this moment would be as unthinkable to our president and his GOP Congress as putting Martin Luther King, Eleanor Roosevelt, or Barack Obama on Mount Rushmore. The legacies of such heroic Americans as Harriet Tubman are feared as too woke, too liberal, too Black, too feminist to be honored or celebrated by our current crop of fear-based leaders. And of course, I imagine Harriet Tubman would no more care about being on America's $20 bill than she did about being honored by folks in her own time, as she was indeed, however, by the likes of Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth and Susan B. Anthony and Lucretia Mott and Ralph Waldo Emerson. But I must say it makes me smile to imagine that someday Harriet Tubman may adorn the $20 bill, replacing, of all people, Andrew Jackson, whose racism among our most xenophobic presidents is legendary. In the midst of social turmoil like ours today, E.B. White and Harriet Tubman are standing here, I believe, in spirit, right here, urging each of us to decide if we will let our fears, whatever it is you were thinking about when I asked that question, let our fear hold us back, or if we will do whatever we can to be counted as going down with Moses to the promised land. I have little doubt Harriet Tubman would join E.B. White in urging us to follow her, to hang on to our hats, and to leap echoing her liberating words, freedom or death, in our hearts, on our signs, in our worship, and our voting throughout our lives. Hang on to your hats, freedom or death. Thank you. I wish I had a hat.
Our closing hymn today is number 344, A Promise Through the Ages Rings.
perish things, the green should always, always sing, and something always, always sings.
For our closing words, I would just like to read again the words of the song, the hymn we sang an hour ago, because I right now have the people of Iran, especially and Lebanon, in my heart and prayers. And John, could you play it again? This is my song. Of course, you can play it again. Can you? You can sing it again. Let's sing it as our closing, okay?
This is my song, O God of all nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy tribe. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine.
Go in peace. Work for justice. Amen.